on. I'm going to deliver this message on Tuesday, and I just want to share a little bit of the message, a snippet of the message today. And this is about the book of First Chronicles. So when you read from chapter 2 to chapter 4, it's talking about the genealogy of Judah. So the lineage of Judah. So you will read things like, and Judah gave birth to Shua, and Shua gave birth to this, and this gave birth to that, and that gave birth to that, or this was the son of that, and that was the father of that. It was that kind of story. And then you will see something like, and these guys lived in Kitchener, and those guys lived in Waterloo, and those guys lived in Cambridge, things like that. And then all of a sudden in chapter 4 verse 9 it says, and Jabez was more honorable than all his brothers. And if you're reading from chapter 4, you will be wondering, because in verse 8 it didn't tell us that Jabez was born. It didn't tell us his father or his siblings. It just said now Jabez was more honorable than all his brethren. So you have to go back to chapter 2 verse 55 to see the first mention of Jabez, and actually the only mention of Jabez up until that point. So in the second chapter of First Chronicles, verse 55, it says that Jabez built a city. In that city, the scribes dwelt there. The Rechabites, the Rechabites, these are the children of a certain man, of Rechab, whom the Bible says he advised his children to live like pilgrims on earth. This is the foreshadowing of the teaching of living as a pilgrim on earth. This man, Rechab, he taught his children to live as strangers, as pilgrims on earth. These guys lived in the city of Jabez. In fact, they lived in their cities until the exile. So they lived in the city of Jabez. And then the scribes lived there. And another tribe lived there. Another group lived there. So there were three groups of people living in the city of Jabez. So you can say that Jabez is like KWC, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge. It's a tri-city. So that's the first mention of Jabez. Then chapter 4, you hear, and now Jabez was more honorable than all his brothers. His mother gave birth to him in pain, and he named him Jabez, saying, for I gave birth to him in sorrow. And then Jabez prayed to the God of Israel, and he says, oh, that you bless me indeed. Enlarge my coast, take away pain from me, that it grieve not my heart. And the most important thing after the prayer is that Bible says, and God heard him. God granted his request. So whatever he prayed for, the real estate he prayed for, God granted. The pain to be taken away from him, God granted him. In fact, his name meant sorrow, one who causes sorrow. It's such a name that brings sorrow to him. Everywhere he goes, he brings sorrow. He's one that causes sorrow. So not only is he a man of sorrow, he is also a man that brings sorrow with him. Wherever he goes, people feel the sorrow that he brings. And he prayed and asked God to take away this from him. And the Bible said that God heard him. God heard him. So if the statement is true that God heard him, we can say that every request he made was granted. Because the Bible didn't say, and God heard some of the prayers. The Bible didn't say, and God granted some of his requests. The Bible said God granted his request. 100% of his requests granted by God. So right there where you are, when you pray, God will grant your request 100%. Right there where you are. Number one, he identified who to pray to. He knew that he has to cry to God of heaven, the God of Israel. And he prayed to God, and God granted his request. Now, some theologians have theorized and said that this Jabez was the same Jabez in First Chronicles chapter 2 verse 55. He was the one that built the city of Jabez. That same Jabez, that one that has so much little to do with. Bible said he cried and said, enlarge my coast. He had a little coast. He had a little real estate. And he says, God, I want to be a real estate mogul. And God granted his request. God answered his prayers. And so he became so big that he built a city that three groups dwelt in. So those theologians, those scholars, Jewish scholars, some of them stated that the reason the scribes lived in his city was that his prosperity was so much that they had to come and study. They have to understand what happened. How come this guy became this big? We knew him. He's the one that causes sorrow and pain. He's the one that whenever he shows up, there's problem in the place. He's like he's living under a curse. After Jesus Christ, he is the next person you can describe accurately as a man of sorrow, acquainted with grief. Not only is he acquainted with grief, he brings grief, he carries grief. He's a bearer of grief, of sorrow, of pain. But the theologians theorized that the scribes had to go to his city, the scholars of those days, the professors of those days, the academic doctors of those days. They went to him. They went to live in his city. The vloggers of those days, the bloggers of those days, they went to live in his city to study, to understand the transformation, the revival that took place in the city of Jabez. The Rechabites also, the pilgrims, the people you can describe as the Nazarites of those days, they lived in the city of Jabez. They lived in the city of Jabez because there was a transformation that happened at Jabez. The revival was huge. People had to go and live and see and experience it by themselves. So right away you are, it doesn't matter the pain you're going through. When you pray, God will answer. And there will be revival that people will come and study. People will come to you to study the revival that God has brought your way. Now, to fully understand this, you have to go to the book of Judges. I believe it's chapter 6. The book of Judges talks about Gideon. The angel of the Lord showed up and said to Gideon, "Thou mighty man of valor." Greetings, thou mighty man of valor. Today it's the equivalent of saying, "You field general." Greetings, field general. This guy is a man who was running away from his enemies. He's hiding. And the angel of the Lord sees him as a mighty field marshal, as a mighty general. He hasn't fought any battle at all. He hasn't fought any war. In fact, he was in hiding from his enemies. And the angel of the Lord calls him a mighty general. That's because God sees the end from the beginning. So he knew the potentials that were locked up in Gideon, even though he was hiding. He knew he was going to conquer the enemies with only 300 men in his army. But Gideon didn't know that. Gideon didn't know that yet. He didn't see that yet. He was still hiding from his enemies. But the angel of the Lord called him mighty general. That's the same way in the topic sentence of 1 Chronicles chapter 4 verse 9 and 10. The story of a man's life was written there. In the topic sentence, it says, "Now the man Jabez was more honorable." Before he has done anything great, he was more honorable than all his brothers. His name was changed from sorrow, from pain, from Jabez to Titus, to honor, to honorable. He became the first honorable man. The man Jabez was more honorable than all his brothers. And we were given the story of a man's life in two verses of the scriptures. So right there where you are, your story will be told, and it will bring revival, and people will come to study it. God bless you. Tune in on Tuesday, East.